What's up, Fox Fox here. When I got my new test bench, I recognized that my test bench now is a little bit less powerful than the one that I bought before, but that's because when you break something, you can't really reimburse as much as you would like to. So I got the 3600, and ever since I've had the 3600, I've looked at it with a curious little glaze on my eyes, like a specimen in the wild. I wondered if I could get the 3080 to work with the 3600 and how it would work in combination. Should you upgrade to a 3080 if you have a 3600, or will it get you by if you're trying to upgrade? And I will address those all at the end of the video, but I wanted to share my benchmarks with you first. So let's hop right into it. First game on the list is Overwatch. Now at 3440 by 1440p, which is where the 3080 kind of shines for me. I have a ultra widescreen monitor and it is fantastic. Somewhat unsurprisingly, Overwatch ran fine at 3440 by 1440 with the ultra settings, with the 3080 getting 203 FPS on average with a 1% low of 133 and a 0.1% low of 44. And as you can see in the gameplay, the CPU is not being utilized above where I would consider to be like safe zones. I would say usually where I start to get wary of whether or not a CPU is bottlenecking is if it stays consistently above 50%. But as you can tell, it usually sat around the 30s, sometimes getting up to mid 50s. So it seems like at this resolution, you're not going to have many issues with the 3600 and 3080 combo. And a little bit surprisingly to me was the fact that 1080p Overwatch 2 with the ultra settings also wasn't incredibly CPU bound either. I got 235 FPS with a 1% low of 59 and a 0.1% low of 30. So as you can tell, the 1% and 0.1% lows did get hit quite a bit, because we are running this at a lower resolution where the CPU is starting to limit the GPU. And as you can see, the GPU is only getting utilized about 75% sometimes. It stays around the 70s, which is an indicator to me that the CPU is doing a lot of work as well. And the CPU, although kind of sitting back, seems to not be giving the 3080 as much oomph as it should for this game. And the 1% low is starkly worse than it was at 3440 by 1440. I can give the 0.1% low benefit of the doubt because it's close enough to the other one, but the 1% low shows clear signs of bottlenecking from the CPU. And up next is God of War. Now at 3440 by 1440 with the highest possible settings, we saw an average frame rate of 87, a 1% low of 62, and a 0.1% low of 37. So although the 1% and 0.1% lows aren't too bad, if you look, the CPU is getting utilized almost as much as the GPU, and the GPU is being forced down to the 85-ish range, where it should usually be at 100% once more. So it's a playable experience, but it's definitely being held back by the 3600, and considering that this is at 1440, you're not going to be super surprised when I say that 1080p God of War at the highest settings ran even worse with an average frame rate of 76, a 1% low of 49, and a 0.1% low of 29. So although the 1% and 0.1% lows aren't bad, the fact that we got a lower average frame rate by dropping the resolution shows that this CPU is crying for mercy, and the 3080 is once more forced to sit back. So God of War is definitely a game where you need a stronger CPU if you are going to run a 3080. And I think that that's just going to be a consistent sort of pattern with more modern games, but I am surprised that God of War was the first one to raise this flag for me, because usually I think of PS4 games as running fine on 6-core processors, but I guess the 3600 just wasn't a match for the 3080 in this case. Up next is Gotham Knights. Now I did not run this at the highest settings, because the highest settings I might as well just have thrown my computer in the ocean and pretended like it was good. At 3440 by 1440p with a mixture of medium and high settings, which is what it detected for me, we saw an average frame rate of 81 with a 1% low of 52 and a 0.1% low of 33. Now, unsurprisingly, as we know, this game isn't optimized at all, and both the CPU and GPU are kind of just sitting back, chilling. Either way, you're gonna have no issues playing Gotham Knights at 1440, but once more a bottleneck is present as we drop down to 1080p. Where we see once more less frame rate on average, with an average frame rate of 74, a 1% low of 41, and a 0.1% low of 18. Now this average might not be as drastic in game as compared to 1440p, because I was in a different scene. Unfortunately, there is no benchmark, and there was a lot more fire effects. But with that said, even if we give it the benefit of the doubt with an extra 10 FPS, that shows that there is bottlenecking seriously occurring. And as we can see, the GPU is sitting at 45% in this gameplay gameplay clip. So it is being held back astronomically, and that is the case for both 1440 and 1080p gameplay. It seems like the 3600 just was not meant for this game. Granted, I don't think anything is meant for this game. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is up next. Now we had everything at the highest possible settings once more, and we saw an average frame rate of 92 with a 1% low of 6 and a 0.1% low of 6. So I don't know what happened with the frame times in this one because it ran fine. I am very confused at the benchmark results for this, but you're gonna have no issues. I play this all the time, and it's not a CPU dependent game, so you're not going to have any issues playing this game. The 1% and 0.1% low should literally be ignored, I think, honestly. And that is even further proofed by the fact that 1080p ran a lot better with an average frame rate of 107, a 1% low of 87, and a 0.1% low of 64. So those are much more accurate 1% and 0.1% lows. I think the benchmark runs, for some reason, were just giving me issues at the higher resolution. The servers have been down, and Modern Warfare has just been screwing me up all day as I've been trying to benchmark this. So I honestly don't blame the 3600 for those 1%, 0.1% lows earlier, because this game is not very CPU heavy. As you can tell, even at 1080p, the RTX 3080 is getting utilized almost 100%. So you're going to have no issues playing this game with a 3600 and 3080 combo. Just disregard the 1%, 0.1% lows from the last one, and you're going to have a fantastic time playing this game. Last but not least is Cyberpunk 2077. At 3440 by 1440 with the ultra settings, we saw an average frame rate of 69, nice, a 1% low of 57, and a 0.1% low of 52. Now both the CPU and GPU are getting hit at this resolution, but the GPU is still using most of its power. There was a slight bottleneck, it was never hitting 100%, but it was hitting 95 to 96%. So if you're trying to like hold over for another CPU or something like that, you're gonna have no problems with most games, if you're playing at higher resolution. And surprisingly, 1080p also didn't run poorly either. With 1080p with the ultra settings, we saw an average frame rate of 107, a 1% low of 87, and a 0.1% low of 64. So this game is very much GPU dependent, but as you can see, there is bottleneck occurring. You will get more frames out of a 3080 and an 8-core plus CPU. You're only getting about 90% usage sometimes. Most of the time it's in the 80s. So the 3600 and the RTX 3080 are not meant for each other. And that's kind of my conclusion. If you are looking for a holdover, if you're somebody who's genuinely curious if their 3600 can get a 3080, because I know deals on 3080s are insane right now. I can't believe I've seen them for like $400. No, it can't. Get a 3800X, get a 5800X, even better. Intel side, same. Get an 8-core CPU minimum for the RTX 3080. Make sure you have a beefy power supply. And all the tests were done with 32 gigs of RAM. I should say that as well. So there's no bottleneck from RAM either. And you're going to have no issues if you are trying to hold over at a 3600. If you're going to upgrade in the future, then the 3080 will be fine to hold you over, but you are going to get a big performance uplift once you get rid of the 3600 and upgrade to an 8-core CPU. That's not me saying that the 3600 is bad. Quite the opposite. I think you're gonna have no issues with like a 3060, 3060 Ti, things like that. That's where the 3600 should still be perfectly fine. And honestly, in everyday use, as well as computing tasks too, the 6 cores and 12 threads of the 3600 are more than enough to do basic video editing, Photoshop, and things like that. So I definitely still recommend the 3600 for budget users because I think it's a fantastic CPU. I've seen it for $100. The fact that you can get 6 cores for $100, even though it is a few years old, is crazy to me. Pair that with a 2060 or a 1650, 1660 Ti, and you're gonna have no issues whatsoever. But the 3080 is just a little bit too much for this poor fella. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, like, subscribe, do what you usually do, and as always, buy yourself something nice.